You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Here we are.
Are we doing it? Is this it?
We're done. This is it.
Okay, I'm ready.
When I say, are you ready? And then you say, yes.
Yes.
That means that the next
You
thing
didn't
to
do
proceed.
this.
I didn't circle my finger.
No, that's my cue. When you're like,
Circle my finger.
when you're stirring the air batter, I'm like, oh, here we go.
Stirring the air
Stirring
batter.
the air batter.
I love that.
Yeah.
Is
Some
that a dance
podcast
move?
cookies. I think so.
Some podcast cookies.
That's what we're doing. We're whipping it up in the air, in the radio waves, and off it goes.
We only had one episode last week, folks.
What happened?
Craig's laptop died.
It died. It died a sudden, unexpected death.
Yeah, it was very sudden. It was very unexpected. And it just completely died.
There was no warning. It was just like, it was just done.
Last week we were recording not this episode, we were recording episode 327. And while we were upstairs in the midst of recording downstairs, the podcast was editing.
I was editing something, uploading.
Yeah, it was in the process of converting video.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came back downstairs to look at it after we were done,
it was
done. It was a black screen and nothing would work and nothing would turn on.
It wouldn't even start. Was it a difficult episode? Was your laptop like, you know what?
I'm not going to edit that one.
This hit home. Right. I'm triggered and I'm out.
I've been editing enough of these assholes episodes for the past 2 years. I'm done. So it totally just tapped out.
Yeah.
It was like I'm taking myself out of the equation.
So you guys have to do it on your own now. You are on your own.
Yeah. So we had a brief hiatus while we got a new computer, and shout out to Craig's longtime friend, Kelly Mondragon, who was able to save the data from the old computer, which now is up on YouTube.
It's pure magic.
So all of that happened, hence why we didn't have a new episode other than one last week. But we're back. Here we are.
I just realized something too.
What's that?
I was mistaken about the coffee. Creamer did not mask it.
Oh.
I thought for sure. Maybe I just didn't put enough creamer in. I decided because I wanted a second pot this morning.
That is some good 7-Eleven, 10 o'clock at night.
Right? We don't have to drink coffee like this
there.
anymore.
Yeah.
I decided I wanted a second pot. So because of that, I was just going to go with the old bag in the pantry instead of the fresh beans.
Yeah.
Because it was just a second pot, didn't need to. And as we're sitting here drinking our pantry ground yummy-osos, we're both going to be, there's no alcohol in this coffee, but every drink we're going to be like,
we wish there was.
That would help. But so it's okay. I'm going to throw a little more creamer in mine in a minute.
Are you? So.
Okay, but we got coffee.
Woo. We're back on the podcast.
It's really not good.
It's not, but that's okay.
It's really not good.
We'll get through it.
Okay.
Do you remember, actually,
One
I was
sip
going
at
to
a
tell
time.
you. I was going to tell you before we got into whatever else we were going to talk about, because we had something that we were going to talk about.
We got a couple of things.
I just discovered something. Hold on, I'm going to Google it real quick. Something just happened here in Utah.
Something just happened?
Mm-hmm. Are you ready?
Yes.
There was a loud boom that was reported across northern Utah, and that was today.
Was it a sonic boom?
It was a sonic boom. Guess what it was?
A jet.
A meteor.
Holy shit, a meteor did a sonic boom?
Yes, around 8 o'clock or 8:30 this morning, there was a huge boom that
Is there
shook people's
video?
houses. I don't think so. Maybe eventually. Somebody probably caught it on their dash cam.
I've experienced that with a jet, but never a meteor. What?
Yeah, so they thought it was a sonic boom from the aircrafts. There's a military base up north, and that's what people thought it was. Turns out it was a meteor that broke through the atmosphere and created a ginormous boom.
And they're still saying most likely a meteor.
Yeah.
Like that just happened.
So it's either a meteor, or it's the beginning of the end, or it was an aircraft from.
What's that Harry Styles song? It's the Sign of the Times. Is that what's happening?
Is that Harry Styles song?
I think so.
You're definitely asking the wrong guy.
It was Oh my God, they did such a good job. It's
Was that show we like?
Yeah.
That we're not going to be able to remember the name of?
Melissa McCarthy and her amazing husband did a fantastic job.
I believe his name is Melissa McCarthy's husband.
I feel so bad. I really like him, but I don't know his name.
You know what? I think they
But
have the
he's
type of
awesome.
relationship that he's totally fine being
He's-
known as.
Melissa McCarthy's.
Yeah.
I said amazing husband. By
Like
the
if
way.
I'm only ever known as Stephanie's husband,
Is there
so okay
circles
with
where
that.
that's what you're known as?
I'm sure there are.
You're.
There's people out there that are like, you know, Steph's husband.
Really?
Can't remember his name, but it's Stephanie Salazar's husband. Yeah, that
Hold
guy.
on, because I feel like I'm totally Craig Salazar's wife, and I'm like, I feel like
Are you okay with that?
well,
Yes.
it's Craig Salazar. Like, have you met him? Like, fuck yeah.
We're gonna do that thing for the next 30 minutes
I'll be
unless we
his
just
milk
go
to
at
the
it.
cookies. I know I'm nervous to have this conversation because it's hard.
We've had a difficult week
Yeah.
of processing all sorts of different things.
And apparently we brought meteors down.
Right.
So the sky is falling.
Yeah, the sky is falling.
Sometimes with shadow works, the sky falls.
Feels like the sky falls. So
Yeah.
if you are
on.
brand new to the podcast, which welcome if you are, right? We say that often, but Stephanie and I are
Okay.
constantly in the thick of working. Not only do we help people work through their shadow, we work through our shadow
We work.
all the time.
That's right.
And we're constantly healing. And the theme of this year has been deep trauma work, deep
Yeah.
inner child trauma, emotional pain, suffering, catastrophe, healing. Has been the theme this year for us.
Mm-hmm.
And this week has been really honed in on two different things. Some core, not just core awarenesses, but like some core fears, and then resistance to help, which we both have. We both can relate to.
Yeah.
So which one do you want to go into first, babe? Actually,
Let's
let's
just
talk
start
about
with
these
the
meteors
right-
more.
right,
Have you guys
co-
tried this
co-
coffee? This fucking coffee sucks.
Like if meteors are falling and giving us sonic booms, we should really be drinking the good coffee.
Right? We
Hear
should
that?
definitely be having
Leave
the
the
alcohol
pantry
in it.
coffee in the pantry. Oh, the alcohol. That's
Let's
not
get
what
some
I'm saying.
Baileys. If those meteors are
I
coming.
was promoting the fresh ground beans, not the not the cheers.
Yeah, so which one do you want to go into?
You know what? Let's start off. Let's start off with the help. Let's
Okay.
start off with asking for help.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to share a little backstory so they have some understanding of where we're coming from, or should we just talk esoterically about the concept?
Well, esoterically, of course. Why would I? We don't want to point right at it. Okay, so we'll start with pointing at Craig. Which
Yes.
is funny because that's exactly what I was doing.
Right.
Like, we have the awareness and the relationship of Craig's amazing projection abilities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the awareness. You see that little cocky face going on. He knows what's happening.
I'm very good at it.
Yes, but
Hold on a minute.
oh, okay. I had a
I think we
caveat.
probably need to talk more about you right now.
I see what you did. So I am really good at blaming myself for things.
Yeah.
I am so fucking good at making it my fault that my projection abilities seem to not surface. I didn't really see it too much.
Oh, because you make everything your fault. That
So
God
everything's my
forbid,
fault. So I'm not a
You
projector.
would never projected
I'm
outward.
not projecting it because I'm obviously internalizing it. Meanwhile, why do you project everything, Craig? Why are you projecting all over me, Craig? What you do, right? You
Sometimes.
project.
Once or twice.
Okay, so we're gonna be honest during this podcast. Let's give that one a
Yeah.
shot.
We'll try.
I didn't fucking see it. I didn't see it. I mean, I'm aware that comes up. I'm aware that what you trigger in me is what is going on in me, right? Like what you're bringing up, which I'm having issue with, is because it's something in me.
Yes.
I have full awareness of the mirror, and I see the ways that I do project.
Let's explain that real quick. Because
Okay.
It's kind of a confusing dynamic.
Okay.
So the idea being in relationships, what the other person, so every time you sit and ask yourself, like, man, this partner of mine does this thing that's really annoying,
Driving me
drives me crazy,
crazy.
right? And
Yes.
she does it all the time, and it's constantly like this thing that just really irritates me and annoys me and drives me crazy. 99.999%, 9999 times out of 10, that's going to be a external projection of something that you do and something that you experience.
You're doing, or it's speaking to a core wound that you have that you haven't looked at.
Right.
So there's so much that it is about you and your perception.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that you take that spin and make everything your fault, but also not everything is their fault.
Right.
So there is the accountability of both parties that takes. But when it's in your awareness, your realization, when you were seeing it, it is for you to look at.
Yeah. So for you, Craig projected everything.
Yeah. So I could see this is how like tricky our ego is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because I could see when I would like
ego is the ultimate shadow walker.
Right? How when you would mirror, and I could recognize that. So also because I could recognize when you were mirroring things for me, that was another ego validation of how I do not project. I am not a projector because I can see it when I'm doing it. But the projection itself, I really didn't see. I really didn't see. So I would project on you being a projector.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see the other things, but the actual core, the projection itself, that didn't apply to me.
Right.
That didn't apply. And then it was like, I was really diving into asking for help. That was what brought that light of, oh, Steph, you are a projecting McProjector. Like, I can't say it quite as well as you, because we point out, and you have awareness of how difficult of a time you have asking for help.
Yes.
And I didn't see that
for yourself.
Within myself. I had surface awareness that I thought was depth awareness of not being able to ask for help to a point. It was just all surface, not really feeling safe with it to a point. And then seeing core wounds of, as a child, asking for help and who I had to go to help.
Right.
Who my sources were for help. And then when I had to ask outside sources for help, the outside sources that were not safe. So it just like projected this, or not projected, perpetuated this cycle. So then this became a deep rooted thing where I don't get to ask for help. And in the event that I do go to somebody for help, now I got to get away. I got to get away because now it is a price that I cannot pay through the price that I would have to pay for the help that I would receive is a price that nobody should have to pay, right? These are unhealthy things that happened in my life, and now it's choosing different, all of that. But I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into the trauma. There was a trauma price that shouldn't have been, because I didn't know how to test, and I didn't understand how to discern what safe help was. It was just unhealthy habits, unhealthy patterns continued on. And so I would go to unsafe sources because I didn't know any better, because all I knew was unsafe sources. So
that's all you had.
I didn't understand what a healthy source looked like.
You didn't have a healthy source. I didn't have a healthy source.
So I had this on a surface level, which felt deep.
Yeah.
And then
I love it when that happens, when you're like, I totally have awareness of this.
Look at me.
And you're like, I've got it totally wrapped up.
Uh-huh.
And the next thing you know, you're like, oh, that was just the surface understanding shit.
It was like, it was crazy. It was crazy. So yesterday we had a really in-depth moment. A lot's happened yesterday. I was only aware to some of it. But where I ended up asking you for help. And then as soon as I laid my cards out and asked you for help, I had a very visceral reaction, a very in-depth of, then I felt manipulated. I felt like I shouldn't have talked to you about things. I felt scared. I felt like I was terrified. And that was my word. I was terrified. And thinking of all the ramifications now that I trusted and I reached out. And this is you.
Right.
And it took a minute for me to realize, I'm not even looking at you right now. My reaction doesn't fit this scenario. I'm not in this room and I'm not with you right now. And that started calming down. And I don't know, like, through your amazingness helping me get to that point of where I could see that, because it was just like, no, this is bad. And just like panicking and needing to get out, feeling like I needed to save my life. And that I had just like everything. I was just, it was, I don't know how to explain it further. And I guess I don't need to. It was just a very full body panic of demise. Like this was, it was, I was hurting. I was already feeling pain that wasn't actually happening. It was insane.
So we had
it wasn't insane, but
like,
it was like, it was a awakening. It was very,
it was a, like you said, visceral triggered response into trauma.
yes.
Like dropped right into a traumatic, somatic, emotional, physical experience, and brought it forth to the present moment. And you were literally feeling all of it.
All of it.
Right in the thick of it, feeling it all.
All of it.
And all of
I
this
didn't
was
even know where I was.
taking place in our kitchen.
In our kitchen with you. And I was not there.
Yeah.
I can still like, I'm trying to like keep it in because my body is like pulling up those things and those situations.
I was going to tell you, just take a breath for a moment, relax, remember where we're at right now.
All those validations of where. So yeah. Take a drink of bad coffee.
Talking about it on our podcast now, that's all. In an effort to help people out there.
It was a long process of us going through, you helping me, just feeling what I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Just feeling that, just being the fact that I asked for help and where that was at. And turns out the thing that I was asking for help on, I don't even know that I really needed help on it.
You didn't.
I just needed that to be a thing so I could get to that core.
Right.
And I'm like, why can't I do things the fucking easy way?
Yeah, it was really.
Oh wait, we do things the easy way. Yes, we do. Bringing it back. I'm a stubborn learner at times. You know, I'm like, I don't know. Let's do things. Let's take the long road.
Right.
Let's take the long road.
We're doing the easy things, though. We're taking the easy path.
Yes.
It was really fascinating because over the course of like the last, we've been together 10 years now. It's been something that I've seen consciously and subconsciously, I think, and really had more awareness of.
Are you talking about your ability to ask for help?
No, we're still talking about you right now.
I'm ready to switch it back. Babe.
Definitely not. Hold on, shields up. We're definitely not coming this direction yet. And we had this topic that we're going to talk, or that was coming to light that you needed help with. Mm-hmm. This thing kept coming up and kept coming up and kept coming up. And we're not going to talk about that thing because that's not necessarily important and that's not necessarily something to be shared on the podcast, but you needed help with something. Mm-hmm. And it was really fascinating because we had been talking about it over the past couple of days. And I was highlighting to you how like your words weren't matching with your behaviors, because you're like, I don't want to talk about this. This is, this isn't something that I want to talk about with you right now, or it's not even with you. It's like, this is not something that I want to talk about. And then 2 seconds later, you would bring it up again.
Bring it back up.
And bring it back up again and bring it back up again. And I'm just like, it's odd that you don't want to discuss this thing that yet you
can't shut up about.
Can't shut up about and keep wanting to talk about it. And I'm like, there's probably something here that we should look at. I didn't have all the awareness of it. I couldn't see the depth of what was hiding there in the shadow, but I'm like, there's probably something here because you keep bringing it up. I don't.
Right.
I'm not suddenly like, hey, what's that thing? And we've done that before too.
Right.
Where I'll be like, keep poking at the bear.
I think you poked at the bear a little bit, but this was before it happened.
Only once I realized that this was 100% big shadow that needed to come forth, did I not let it drop. Right. Where I was like, hey, we should probably talk about that thing.
And then I felt like, and I started bringing up all the defenses for that. I'm like.
Every time I started to articulate why I thought we should talk about this thing, you're like, no.
And then I had a reason too.
Here's the reason why we shouldn't, or here's the reason why it's not safe. Or if we talk about this thing, then it's going to cause you to feel all of this. It's going to fuck up your life. It's going to create all sorts of chaos for you. And I'm like, yeah, see how all your defensive mechanisms and all your ways to push things off and not prioritize yourself.
That's when I started to see just a little bit that was when you pointed that out. I'm like, oh, I am doing that thing. I'm giving you like that was my cue when I started, when here's this thing, but I have every excuse I can be like, no, this angle, this is why no. This angle, this is why no. When I'm sitting here like giving you a plethora of excuses of why this is something that is not to be discussed, this is not to be brought up, then that's my cue of like, oh, boy, maybe I'm working really hard to not talk about this.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's just a no, right?
Yeah.
It's just a, yeah, no, that doesn't really apply. Not, well, because of this and I want to talk about it, but because of this, and well, if I do this and that, all of that like spider webby bullshit that I will churn up in my brain. Yeah, that's when I first started thinking, oh shit, we're going to have to talk about this. But I still didn't know what was actually going to come up.
Yeah. And like you said, the thing that this was all being stirred up by has nothing to do with the shadow. It's so fascinating how that happens.
Right?
Because this is like deep shadow of asking for help.
Right. Nobody knew what was behind door number 2.
And it's like, what happens when you ask for help, and what does asking for help bring up and make you feel, and all the stuff that you're talking about right now, right? Being triggered and going back to this visceral response of how dangerous it is to ask for help, and how you didn't have a safe place to ask for help, and how you very much needed help, right? Like that's the other thing is when you and I come from this, we both have a traumatic childhood where we needed help and we didn't have anywhere to turn. That kind of landed, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to write this down for later.
Okay. And so that's what happened. And that's what, like, you basically talked about the thing and you got the thing out. And I listened to all of it. And I'm like, this is weird because none of this is really important. And it's not to say it wasn't important. Obviously it is, right? But I listened to everything that you said in regards to this topic. And then I'm like, okay, all of that stuff that you just got done talking about is kind of over here. And yes, we need to think about it and talk about it. And it's got some importance and some significance. But what I'd rather do is focus on you right now. And let's look at this and how this external thing has triggered this inside of you. So it's like, let's redirect and come back to you now and go into the shadow of why this is triggering for you and what this is bringing up for you. And as soon as I did that, you were like, you're manipulating me.
I know.
You're doing this.
Well, I didn't.
It feels like you're gaslighting me.
Caveat.
I didn't mean to point at you in that moment either.
I didn't say you are manipulating me. What I said, if I remember, what my brain remembers saying, which I might have, is like, I feel like, Craig, like, I feel like you did this I feel like you're manipulating me. Everything in my body right now is saying like, this was a mistake. This is wrong. You were manipulating me. This is what I can't get that out of my head. I really feel manipulated right now. So I think if I'm remembering right, at least in that moment, I was using language that wasn't, you are manipulating me.
You just said you are manipulating me.
Did I just say that?
In the example.
So is that how I said it then? Yeah. Oh God.
It's okay.
Did I do any of it right? Did I do any of it just telling you I felt manipulated? Because I remember saying...
You did say, I feel.
Okay, good.
But it is just one...
I'm going to take that win. I'm going to take
all of it's
that
a win. The fact that you were willing to go into any of it. And the fact that you were willing to sit through all of it.
Yeah.
It was a massive win for you.
You got to celebrate those. This shit is so fucking hard.
It is so hard.
It is so hard, and it brings up so much, and it is so easy to just rip yourself apart and pick yourself apart and degrade yourself and bring it down and cut it down to keep you from working further. Mm-hmm. So when you can start to see, like, catch yourself doing it right. When I'm like, okay, I did a lot wrong, but also I stayed in that process. And I remember to say at some point, I am feeling this. I feel this. This is what it feels like.
Yeah.
So that is a huge shift, being able to do that in a highly triggered moment. And I was scared to death. Yeah. And granted, you did I love having this partnership. I love that we get to do that for each other. I hate that we have to. But I love that we choose to and that we get to and that it's getting easier. And also it's getting harder because shit that we didn't even have to look at before because we were too busy with this is now like, oh, here we are. Now we get to look at even deeper. It's just like the shadow just keeps coming up. But we are, I don't know. I don't want to say healing it, but.
Why? Why don't you want to say that?
I don't know.
It's what we're doing.
I guess where I'm kind of seeing it is saying healing, at least in this moment, is reiterating all the ways that I have always felt broken and bad and wrong, and I had to be fixed. And I'm trying to look at it now as, this is what I learned. This is where I was. This is how I survived. This is the part of me that didn't know better, and now I have better tools. So it's nothing that was wrong or broken, just wasn't allowed to grow. And so now it gets light. So it's like bringing light to it. It's not healing. It's not like taking it away. It's just like, oh, I can see this now and I can do this differently instead of this coping way.
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of like that's a whole other topic of how that's been a big thing. And that even came up of wanting to take things out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Just like cut it out, cut things off of me, cut things out of me. And that was my like fix. If I could just remove this part that hurts and just throw it out, then I would be okay.
Yeah. So
really looking at that, I'm not broken. Just I have more tools now.
Yeah.
Things that were not. Anyways, I got a little lost in that. So it was a beautiful experience. It was beautiful, and it was really hard, and I was exhausted, and you challenged me to stay in it and in the feeling. And then we had more awareness of I used to avoid the peak, right? The peak of emotion. I used to avoid the peak, and I wouldn't want to feel. What's up?
Nothing.
I totally got squirreled. Did I?
No. Nothing is wrong. I'm trying to not feel the need to like over explain everything, because
okay, which is exactly what I was just starting to do.
No, not at all. You haven't done anything wrong. You're talking about the peak, and I want to butt in and start explaining what you're talking about.
So like so nobody understands her. Let me.
It's not that nobody understands you. It's that you and I have a language. You and I have you and I have an understanding of peaks and valleys in regards to emotional work, right? And it's the metaphoric of whether it's the mountain climbing or the wave riding, right?
So you're right. Yeah, I am spinning off on that, and I want to stay on topic.
That's an important part that I want to talk about too.
Well, we can get to it, but I think we need to finish a thought. Let's see if we can finish
this fucking coffee, guys. Right? Let me tell you about this coffee.
So that asking for help, that not being able to see, that projection, you've had awareness of you not being able to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I have awareness of you not being able to ask for help and you not being willing to receive help.
Yeah.
And that has been something that I have like pointed at you. Like you won't let me help you. You won't receive my help. You have to do things on your own. Not even realizing that, you were like, hello. It's like, no, you. Until that moment. And it was just like, I had no idea.
How guilty you were of it.
That was fucking rough. Yeah, I'm guilty.
Sorry, guilty's the wrong. Guilty's a strong word. How you were doing the same thing.
How deep that was in me. How deep of a core that was in me, and how I had no idea. Because I hadn't let myself feel it.
Yeah.
I hadn't felt it to that level. I hadn't sat in it. It was like cause and effect. Like, yeah, this is a thing and this is why. And it was like justified. So it just analytically made sense. And you can't do this because of this, but have to kind of work on that here. So there's probably some areas where it is safe, but I can see why that's not safe. And so I just won't do that here, but there's probably some areas where maybe I could do it. And so that's something that I'm aware of. That whole thing, I'm aware of it and I'm working on it. No, you're not. Liar.
You're aware of it and you've put it over there.
Right?
In the corner and said, don't fucking move.
And you're like, I know it's there.
Right?
I know it's there. I'm working on it.
And then it raises its hand. It's the bad student in the back. Excuse me, teacher, I have it. Shut the fuck up. I know you're back there, Johnny. I don't want to fucking hear anything with you.
Right.
Nope, don't talk.
And then they're like, hey, do you know Johnny? Yeah, I'm aware of Johnny.
Yeah, I'm aware of that shit.
I'm aware. I'm working on it.
We've got him in the back of the room. He's a distraction. He causes problems. If we let Johnny up front.
Poor Johnny.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. And so then
Jill.
yesterday was
Johnny or Jill. Or whatever non-binary name they want to identify as. So yeah.
So yesterday was oh my gosh, you know, it was like, I'm still feeling it. I'm getting nauseous just talking about it. And like, this is fresh. This is brand new awareness.
I know.
Right.
It's
and
kind
then
of playing with fire talking about it right now.
But then I had an interesting conversation with Asher last night, who is in the midst of his own processing and where he's at in life and figuring out it's thick for him right now. And he told me, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want help with it. I want to do it my way. And I was like, well, how are we going to help? Like, you got two parents that are like, I don't need any help, but let me help you. And he's like, the fuck you will. Take your shit over there. Like, what do we do here other than just hear him? I wish there was more that I could come in and be like, here I am to save the day, and like know how to help him and give all these things in here. And at the end of the day, all I can do is respect that.
Well, you can respect that. And the action that you take is heal your shit.
I'm doing that.
Right.
Well, it's a process.
That's the
I'm
action.
working on it and tell him, you know, I'm here if you want to talk, and then just dropping it so he doesn't feel that. And then I have to sit here and be like, here's this thing that I thought I was doing really good at, and I am like square one. And honestly, you're not square one,
right? Because
square one is you don't even know this thing's happening.
Yeah.
Square one is you don't even know that Johnny's in the classroom. You don't even have any awareness. So I'm not square one. No. It's just I have leveled up. And when you level up and you're starting a new level, it feels like you're at the beginning. Yeah. Because it's the beginning of that level. So your mind tells you that it's a regression and that you are all the way in the back. And you're like, no, you're not. You just leveled the fuck up. You're at a brand new level. You're on like round one of this new level. So you just hear round one. You're like, I'm all the way in the back. No, you're like on level 83. You're up there. You're not at the beginning. Yeah. I mean, you may have 642 to go, but you're still doing good.
It's so common, I think, this whole issue that you and I are talking about right now of not asking for help, right? Do you want some more coffee? No, I'm okay. So common because we both have it.
Yeah,
we both have it.
We both know that now
in spades, and we both really struggle with it, and we know why. Right? It's obvious now. We didn't even really kind of have a understanding of our resistance to it, but now we not only acknowledge the resistance and the avoidance and the like. You will fight before you will receive help. That was really interesting to me to watch. Was all the things that you were like pulling out to start attacking and resisting and shielding and deflecting. Like you were bringing out the big guns of like...
Was I mean?
You weren't mean, because what happens is you don't get mean. Okay. Until you're like, your mean is very different. It's a different response. Okay. But you get very, just you deflect beautifully. You've got a lot of shields that come up and...
I'm a deflector, you're a projector. It's not the same thing.
And but it was interesting to sit in the experience with you, because when all of that stuff started to happen, that was like my, key, that was the big alarm going off in my head. I'm like, oh, we're touching some really big wound right now. I didn't even have full awareness of it. In my mind, it's like, oh, she doesn't want help. She's resistant to help. Cool. That's the surface understanding of it. And truthfully, that's all that it is. Right. But yet the depth and the layers and the integration
it's got some roots to it.
It's got deep, deep, deep seated roots. And in the base of that tree and those roots is where all that pain and suffering and trauma is stemming from. And so it was like when you started to really defend and try to protect yourself, then I got like super, super slow.
I know. I can feel it too. And I'm like,
where it was like, because I had a moment where luckily, I don't even know why or how, but luckily I was in a pretty centered place and I was able to just see and be and hear and not get defensive. And like the part of me that wants to come out and defend against your defense, like as soon as your walls go up, it's so funny, the metaphors that come to mind, right? Where it's like all these little soldiers come out of the portcullis, out of the gate of the castle, and the door shuts behind, and then they line up and they go, huh, and they sit through with their shield, right? All of Steph's little soldiers. And then
I don't have little soldiers. I have warriors.
All of my same thing come out, and and then we start this battle of wills to see who's going to be more defensive.
Do you know what is so funny to that? My amazing, like, I don't know what to call her now, because I'm like, right? I'm like,
what's the word? If only I had a word. She's this person that helps me process in my healing.
She'll say that to me. She will call me out when my managers are coming out, when my like defenses are coming out. She's like, do you know how does she say it? She's like, I know when yours are coming out because mine start talking.
Yeah.
And so she hears her and she's like, okay.
That's what happened. As soon as like you started firing off volleys at me, and immediately I had all of my like, you want to fucking start throwing that shit this way?
Because then we don't have to look at anything.
Exactly.
Because we're too busy throwing volleys, and they're like, emotions stay safely hidden.
Exactly.
We don't have to look at those right now.
So I was able to just like, whatever, guys, we're not going to fight, and put all those guys to rest, and just got very slow and very quiet and very patient, and just allowed everything and kept trying to keep you back or bring you back to the core of what this was. Just come back to this space.
Which I do not like.
Just come back.
That was rough.
And the other key thing that I think is important and I think is really beneficial, and that's why I want to talk about it, because I want people to think about it this way. Not like I'm controlling the way that you think about things, listener.
Yes, he is projector.
Just kidding. I think it's so key is using the physical experience that the body is going through as a roadmap. And it's not necessarily always like driving in, like a roadmap takes you to a certain location, right? If we're trying to get somewhere, then we follow the roadmap. But sometimes, and you and I both do this, our physical bodies will start to have things that indicate that we are hiding and covering and don't want to feel what we're feeling inside of our bodies. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept highlighting that to you of like, look what your body's doing. Feel your body. See how you're, and everything in your body. See,
I know. I'm like,
she's doing it now. If you're like only listening,
punch you with the shoulder.
But that's the really fascinating thing to watch as well. And I think it's a really important thing to highlight is our bodies will do that. Yeah. It'll immediately start protecting itself. And so if you can just imagine, like inside your belly is this tiny little wound, this core thing, this hurt, and then every other part of your body starts protecting it, starts trying to make sure that it is protected and not seen. So then we just use the body to slowly open to allow that thing to be felt. And then you rode those waves.
Yeah.
You rode those waves. And the peak of that wave, the crest of that wave is so intense when you touch upon these really core wounds that it feels like it's going to like smash and destroy, and it's like you can't make it to the peak of it because that climb and that crest of that wave is so high and so steep and so intense that if I ride that wave, it's going to kill me.
That's what it really feels like. It feels like that peak is death.
Yeah.
That if you hit that level of emotion, that you're dead. Like you can't do it.
Yeah. And then you hit it.
So of course you're going to try and avoid that shit.
Right. Then you hit the peak of emotion. And then you ride it for a minute and it's intense. And then that crest comes down. And the after the intensity starts to come down and you start to come down the backside of that wave and everything, your body goes through all of these other reactions and all of this other stuff starts happening. Yeah,
this is the part that I was missing because it was so hard for me to get to the peak, which we were saying before, that I would avoid that peak. I would like start climbing and then find my baseline and like, boom.
Yeah.
I wouldn't allow that. I was thinking I was saving my own life. Did not allow that. So finally making it to the peak and allowing myself to feel these ginormous emotions that completely take over. I thought that was like, and then, I didn't have awareness of the importance of the riding the wave back down. I made it to the pink and then boom, disconnect. And I didn't know that I was missing all of this. And this was still a part of the process, even though my therapist has told me, finish the cycle. You've got to finish the cycle. And I'm like, Yeah, peaked, finished.
Right?
It's like right after the orgasm, you're done. Da, 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 da. Nope, it's not how it goes.
That part that's on the backside of the emotional experience, the peak and then the crest, and then like the after effects of that, I think, is the part where
that's integration.
Yeah, like that's the part where your body can integrate the experience and have the memory of the healing so that it starts to take root and starts to take effect. And you and I both do it where we will disassociate and leave our bodies after the peak. So we'll have the peak experience and the intense emotion and then disappear and leave our bodies so that we're done feeling. You're like, I did the hard work, I'm out.
Right.
And
and your ego's telling you did it.
Yeah.
You did it. So you are feeling like you have accomplished.
Here's the reward. Get out of there.
Yeah.
Now. You don't have to do any more work. But staying in because as your body is like, I'm sitting here thinking about this now and kind of having the fresh experience of watching you go through this yesterday, but then also having the knowledge of how I experience it as well. Like that come down experience after the heightened emotion is all of those like chemicals inside of your body, all the neurotransmitters, everything that's fired, all the adrenaline and all that chemical dump that happened in the intensity of riding up to the peak is the come down experience that has to be integrated. Otherwise, it's like going in and trying to shut those things off.
Right.
It's like, here's the neural pathway that needs to be connected. And you're almost there at riding the peak and it's like almost there. And then you cut off that connection and that neural pathway so that it doesn't have a chance to fully bond together and create a new path. We're creating this new neural network inside of our emotional body in the healing process of this experience. And if we just check out, then it's like cutting it short. We're not giving it the full connection.
We have to keep going back to it, trying to form that connection. Keep
going back to try to create that connection and that new pathway.
So
it's so important to ride the intensity of all of it. Yeah.
That's not even metaphorical. That's how that appeases your analytical mind right there too.
Right.
Because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And there's so much there's so much meat and juice and so much awareness in the after effect too, right? So like your unwillingness to ride the wave on the backside.
Didn't even recognize that it was a necessity.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, boom. It wasn't something that I was avoiding consciously. I did not think it was a part of it, or, it was just like the peak. I made it to the peak. It was all about the journey to the peak.
Yeah.
I had no awareness that this is where the integration happens.
Yeah.
No awareness.
It's so fascinating. Huh?
Right.
You had different coping mechanisms for each side of the peak too.
Yeah.
Like your defenses going up were very much, all your coping mechanisms were very much external, where you're like, I'm going to fight this. Like you're the threat and I'm going to battle. And then you get to the peak and then the backside was, I'm done. I'm going to disconnect and disappear.
Yeah.
Disassociate and gone. Like you weren't fighting anymore on the backside of it. You weren't bringing forth all the defenders to try to protect. You were like, I'm going to check out and leave my body. Very, very different coping mechanisms.
Well, I can, that'll be one to touch back on later. I can absolutely see why that's learned that way.
Right.
Yeah.
We can see that too from trauma and how that would mirror the fight or flight. So we get like awareness.
Taking notes for my therapist.
Do you ever wonder? Sometimes I laugh and I think, because I talk in therapy, I'll reference, shit that you and I talk about on the podcast and stuff that comes up. I think we should just start sending, hey, I've got a therapy appointment coming up on Monday. Would you mind just go ahead and listening to episode 327? Because that's what we're going to be talking about. I just want you to kind of get a sneak peek and a fast forward so that we can save a whole bunch of time.
Right.
So that you're aware of where I'm coming from and what we're going to be getting into. Just listen to episode 327, please.
That's a great idea.
Right? Yeah. That's good awareness. I didn't have that either. That we have different like coping mechanisms and defensive techniques and tactics for each side of the peak.
It's where your body learned, because when it was too intense, right? How your body protected itself from that trauma. It left. It's like that's where
Yeah.
Disassociation was born.
Right. And now we get to retrain it.
It's funny, the amount of pain that I'm getting right now. It's hitting so hard my head, like above my right eye. I'm just like, this is where that core is, because it is. I'm like, I need to go lay down. It's making my teeth hurt. The whole physical response. It is painful right now. It is really painful.
Have a sip of water.
Yeah.
When you drink that water too, try to taste it.
You taste your water, mister.
No, that's an important somatic thing where
I know
it's
it is. I just don't want to. I don't want to work right now. We're podcasting.
It's an easy work. Just
drink your coffee.
Hold on. Let's pause for a drink of water. Everybody, if you're listening to the podcast and you have water nearby, try to taste your water when you drink it. It's a mindfulness practice.
It's a really good trick.
So it's not just drinking it quickly. You have to taste it. Almost like it's wine. Smell it. Taste it. Let it emulsify in your mouth.
It's so funny how much when I'm this activated, how much I need quiet. I'm like, why are you talking?
So yeah, asking for help is hard.
Yeah.
And if you resonate with that, right? If asking for help is hard for you, or if you're in a relationship with somebody who...
Or are you like, I don't have a problem asking for help, but my partner does.
Yes. If you just said that to yourself, we have now uncovered the truth that you actually have a problem asking for help. Anytime you're like, that's not me, that's my partner though. That should be your key to look at your shit.
Fun awareness in your future.
Right. Yeah. If you want.
Yeah. You don't have to. You don't have to. That's for sure.
I'm reading this book. Didn't Start With You. Is that the name of the book that I'm reading? It didn't start with you. Yeah. It's a really good book. I love it. It's super inspiring and makes me really happy. Like I read this book and I just feel overcome with joy and happiness. Yeah, it didn't start with you. But the whole idea of epigenetics and how all of these traumas and all of these fears and all of these things and all these manifestations that we exhibit over the course of our life probably didn't start with us. Probably has something to do with our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. But I heard a part of it today that I wanted to talk about on the podcast because I hadn't really thought about this either. Yeah. The idea is that we don't remember the good things. We remember the bad things because that's how we keep ourselves safe. So by remembering the bad things, then we have some neurological programming, some instinctual programming of
not to touch the hot stove
again. Right? So if we're out there walking, hunter gathering our life back in the day, how would you stay safe? Well, you have to remember
what not to do.
You have to remember what was dangerous.
Holy shit.
In order to not recreate the danger, right? So you only remember the bad things because you're programmed to keep yourself safe by doing so.
That is so crazy. That makes sense.
Doesn't that make sense?
That makes sense. I've always had this thing of I have good memories associated, and I have
why can't I hold on to those good memories? Why don't I remember the good things?
Yeah. Oh, here's something that sparked that memory, and how did I forget that? That's such a good memory, right? And I never made that connection.
That the only reason you're remembering the bad stuff all the time is because that's how you keep yourself safe. And that's not something that that's instinctual.
That's instinctual, yeah.
That's not something, yes, it was taught to us in a sense, right? Mm-hmm. It's in our programming, but that's totally evolution. That's how our species has survived, right? Is by,
oh my goodness.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah.
Remember, don't go there.
And then that's how the traumatic way that you, that we're working on healing, but that's how, I'm reading Toxic Parents right now. So I'm my shit that was received and my shit that was dished, but then the punishment that you handle when you have a punishment learning environment based off of a consequence, you're teaching them that way. You're giving them a bad result to help them to not learn to do that. So instead of it, so it's instinctual and it is taught.
Reinforced.
Bad things happen. You'll remember the bad things so you don't do the bad thing again. What?
Yeah.
It should have been at the beginning of the podcast. This is a whole podcast.
Well, we can explore it on next week's episode.
Damn. Let's keep exploring it. Let's just part two it.
It was really interesting.
I'm pouring more coffee, so come on now.
Do you just want to do a part 2 and we'll get into that? We can.
What do you think?
I think we can do that.
I think we're in the flow and we got the coffee.
Okay.
How do
Let's
you feel?
do it. I like it.
Okay.
So we'll wrap real quick this episode, folks, and stay tuned for part 2 where we explore how you only remember the bad things.